Wait, the clapping, what happened to it?
With the pregnant pause.
Slightly delayed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Quantum Leap Revisited, a show that we do once a week where we discuss the classic, iconic sci-fi show Quantum Leap starring Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell. I'm Price of Reason, and with me I have, of course, this wonderful panel of gentlemen, most of which, not most, all of these people you already know, but I'll still introduce them again. First of all, we have Ro from the Sacrif Podcast. He is the host of the podcast. Any service that has the podcasts like Apple and Amazon and Spotify, you can find him there. And in addition to that, he's a broadcast news veteran who brings a lot of expertise when it comes to behind the scenes, technical equipment, things like that on a production. And he's also the co-founder of the Red 5 Network, which is a network of other podcasters, which Nick down here is also actually a member of the Red 5 Network. Now it's getting a bit complicated. How's it going, Ro?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me, and it's wonderful always to be here with you guys.
Absolutely. And next we have the Script Doctor. He's a veteran screenwriter. He has his own Patreon where he teaches screenwriting. He's also the host of a show called Scripts on Saturdays. Every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, he and a guest go over screenplays that are either currently or at one point have been considered by major studios for a green light production to move forward with production. In some cases, some of these scripts have actually been picked up by studios. Some of them are currently in production. He and the guest go over it. They evaluate the screenplays. They give their thoughts on it. It's a great show. How's it going, Script?
It's going really well, actually. Yeah, in fact, I recorded the Valentine's Day episode because I'm not streaming live on that weekend because I don't want to be in trouble. But yes, so yeah, we got exciting stuff this week. I'm always happy to be here, especially for this episode. And I wanted to apologize for not being here last week. I fell asleep. It was a very long day, and I didn't want to miss that episode because there's a great point I wanted to make. I told Price about it.
That is true. That is true. You were, and I'll just say it because it doesn't matter. I can just say it now. Last week was the episode where a woman, Sam leaps into a woman who was served grapes, and what Script was telling me is usually if you're an unknown actor, you don't want to get the role of the grape enthusiast male, because if you're a male who likes grapes, that can actually sort of typecast you in a negative way, and you don't want to be in that position. I think that's what you were saying, right, Script?
It's the first impression syndrome, right? So if your first impression to an audience is that you're this type of bad guy, that sticks with you for a long time, and it's really hard to get out. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to follow like the Kevin Bacon approach, because Kevin Bacon has actually played a lot of SA, but not until much later into his career. So what you do is if you're in that mode where you're like, oh, I'm going to be like a villain actor or a jerk, you pick the ones that allow you to be a villain without crossing that line until people are like, oh yeah, he's a good actor. I like him. He's not really like that type of guy. And I like how he's committed. And I like hating him in this roles. And then you do a couple of roles where you're not the villain to broaden your palette, so to speak. And then if you get hired for that role with that dark aspect, your career will be saved because everybody will be like, oh yeah, I've seen him in all these other roles. I know he's a good actor. I don't associate him with that. But if it's your first acting gig and you pick that or you get cast as that and you accept it, your career's done. It's just done. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know anyone who has started out that way and actually has had a very long running career without either a number of other roles they've done coming sequentially right after that. So it kind of blocks out the imagery and more dominant with the other part of the role. So it's one thing I tell all my new actor friends getting in the business is like, yeah, if you get a role where that you're assaulting somebody, in that way, turn it down, because if you want to work in this industry, your first impression needs to be something people actually want to associate you with, and you want to be associated with, not that. And I have to say, the guy that played that character in the last episode, he was really good. Like, he was a really good actor.
Never saw him again.
And after he did 2 more episodes on 2 other shows, and then he vanished. And it's not for a lack of talent. It's people said, up. We keep seeing he is that guy in that Quantum Leap episode.
He's a grape server.
Mm-hmm. He likes to serve grape juice. He's the Welch's spokesperson.
So I'm sorry for delaying Nick's intro. So, but thank you.
Sorry. And then finally,
Oh no,
we have
no. Last week was a much better episode, so the more time we talk about that, the better.
That's rough, but I think you're right, actually. But next we have Nick. For those of you who don't know, Nick is a minister in his local church in his town, and he's also the local locksmith, and he's also a consultant to the sheriff and the fire department. He also has his own ranch where he raises ghosts. Why would you raise
ghosts?
I've been on too many streams today. Why would you be raising ghosts? That doesn't sound good. No, you're raising goats on your own
Pac-Man
ranch,
farm.
Pac-Man farm, and you have your own goats on a farm. And he's also an expert in sci-fi. How's it going, Nick?
Going okay. Rough day, had a lot of things happen, but I have to say, nothing quite lives up to the experience I had last night watching this episode.
It was a very interesting episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just initially have a little bit of a discussion here before we start. Basically, for those who don't know, this episode is The Wrong Stuff, and it is the 7th episode of the 4th season, in which Sam actually leaps into a monkey during the space race days or whatever it is.
Actually, but yes.
Sorry. You're right, Script. It's a chimpanzee. I accept that. I'm not good at that stuff. They kind of see one monkey, I see them all.
They're apes.
But yeah, it's a chimpanzee. I'll accept that. In any case, he leaps into that. The funny thing is that last time they actually didn't show us that he leaps into that. It's almost like they knew it was kind of dumb and preferred to keep you in suspense, thinking he may be an astronaut on a mission, which would have been cooler. Like, I would have preferred, right? I would have.
Like, they didn't want to tease that the previous week because they're like, well, people, if we tell them he's going to be in a chimpanzee's body, people might not show up to watch that episode.
Right. I think you're right. I think that there's some people that even saw our stream today and they're like, oh, it's that chimpanzee episode. I mean,
Talk about the chimp.
Right. I mean, it's sort of, if nothing else, at least it's ambitious. They tried something, but yeah, I can see why they'd want to hide this. And I have a feeling that when they actually got the episode, when it was in the can and they looked at it, somebody must have thought to themselves that perhaps it's not the greatest hour of TV ever made. I'm just speculating here.
It's a wanting episode. There's potential for what they could have done, and they did none of. It was like they didn't know at the time or couldn't think of anything better to do at the time. It has this allegory with regards to like animal abuse for the benefit of humans, which is a very true event in our history. But I found the logic for the scientists to go that route to be a little, again, as I said before, wanting. There were a lot of people actually at NASA and the people that they recruited, even though some of them from Operation Paperclip were controversial, but there were some in there that were actually a lot more humane than what was demonstrated in this episode when you take a look at the records that have survived from their changeover from the old tape files to their digital stuff. But this this one was it was, I know it's an episode that a lot of women like to watch on mute because Scott Bakula is only wearing a diaper. But there's not really much else going on here.
Let's ask the women in the chat. Is that true? Is that a true statement?
I mean, Marks for 7 here. Let me see his question. Is saying, really, didn't they hype it up in previews during the week? I don't remember. I actually don't remember if they hyped it up or not. Maybe they did, but all I know is in that previous episode, they didn't show you as a monkey. So I think they thought maybe it's cooler to leave you in suspense that he's an astronaut. If the commercials then showed him as a monkey, I don't know. I don't know how people felt about it at the time, but it's definitely, if nothing else, it's an odd episode. You know, sometimes there's a few episodes in this series that I kind of consider them oddball episodes, for good and for bad, and I think that this certainly qualifies as one. Let me see if I can already share it.
You know, I'm a straight guy, so maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think Sam looks sexy in this episode. There's
I
something
don't know.
about a grown man in a diaper that just, if there's a
Doesn't do it-
mood, that
doesn't do it
outfit
for
kills it.
Doesn't do
Yeah.
it for you. You know, it's funny. So last week when we saw the trailer, the tail end of that episode that introduced this little scene, I didn't know that he popped into a monkey, into a chimpanzee. Somebody in the chat said it, and I remember somebody warning them not to spoil it because it wasn't in the teaser. But and during the week, you guys were talking about it, and in the chat, in our group chat, and I thought that I was going to really, really hate it. But I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. And we'll obviously get into it, but it was interesting episode. And I think for me, it was because I think the previous episodes were kind of like middle ground, like meh, that I feel like the writers said, you know what, we need to spice things up a little bit. We need to kind of take some chances. And they came up with this story, which is, fine. But I do feel like like I said, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. But we'll get into it as we start discussing it a little more.
Well, Marlo Sherendorf says the only time Scott complained about his wardrobe was this episode, and Tex
can see
Roger
that.
says, Price says, oddball, I say bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Then Malachi D. Wildman, why did he leap into an animal this time versus before with a blind pianist? Not sure I understand that question.
Yeah, me either. Sorry. This one here, well, he's leapt into this animal because really to save the animals. Really, like that's kind of it. It was a very thin.
Yeah,
changing.
Even at the end, I was like, wait a minute, why did he leap into this chimpanzee?
To
I'll
save
t-
Bobo. Yeah, apparently.
There is this kind of sneaky feeling that they really wanted to address this animal cruelty thing, and they kind of tailored it to work with this whole situation.
Could
Now,
be.
I'm okay if there's a message, and at the end of the day, I can see that it's not a divisive message in the sense that like animals shouldn't be experimented on unless it's absolutely necessary. What this episode is trying to say, I'm okay with that. Somehow their way of reaching this conclusion in this story, probably there was a better way to do it. I prefer that Sam would go into a doctor. You know what I mean? Let him be a doctor that deals with the animals and him to reach his conclusion. The thing that he's a monkey, chimpanzee, whatever it is, I don't know. But
it feels like a gimmick. It's
Yes.
like, we think ratings might be down. Let's put Sam into a body of a monkey.
I do
And
like
yeah,
this
I think if he was in her body, I think it would be a better show.
I prefer
But,
that he would have been in the other guy's, the doctor's body, and then he goes out on a date with her. But maybe I'm kind of straying from what they were trying to do in this episode.
I think it was definitely gutsy and it took a chance. I didn't fault them for that.
No, I didn't either.
Se. It was, it was definitely different. It was, and like I said, I think they kind of wanted to maybe take some chances and shake things up a little bit, which I think they kind of succeeded, but in a haphazard way. There's a scene where where Sam gets attacked by those two dudes with the tranquilizing gun, and there's a big fight there, and that was kind of dramatic.
Karate.
Yeah, that was kind of dramatic though. When if you picture it as Sam being the chimpanzee and this animal is being attacked and abused and stuff like that, it's kind of a little powerful. I almost got Guardians of the Galaxy 3 vibes from it, from the standpoint of these animals just want to be free and live their lives, et cetera, as far as the messaging goes. But I think it was a little risky. I don't know about the execution, like you were saying, if it was pulled off just quite right.
I don't quite know how the monkey would do karate, though. There were things that, like, I guess what I'm saying is it required more suspension of disbelief than usual. But we'll get to it. Let's. I agree with your points.
I think to make that work, You know how last week we had her giving the statement, and that was what really sold the episode. It was kind of a weird, unique way they did it, but without it, the show wouldn't have been as impactful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think if they had managed to show him as the monkey more, it would have improved the episode. Because Sam, they degrade him in some ways. He's always in the diaper. They're, trying to stick things in places you don't want things stuck, but he doesn't move like an ape in this. He doesn't move like a chimp. And I think it would have been interesting to have seen a chimp doing some of those moves that make him not, it just would have sold the episode more, I think.
Yeah, and I think he does it sometimes, but not all the time. And I think I agree with you, Nick. I think there should have been a little more. I was kind of paralleling it with the original Planet of the Apes movie, where the obviously the men in the costumes would walk like they would do like kind of the gorilla walk and stuff like that, and they stuck to it, obviously. So I kind of agree with you that it's sometimes like he forgot who he was, and that maybe he should have been a little more consistent with the fact that he was a chimpanzee. So yeah, I think sometimes that like took me out of it. Like, oh, that's right, he's a chimpanzee.
I
had a
think
funny
it's kind of weird that, see, chimpanzees have the vocal cords and capacity to speak English. They just, or any language, they just don't have the mental faculties, as far as we understand, to do so. Or at least they can't comprehend or elocute in the same way. But with Sam in his body, that shouldn't be a factor. And the other part too is, well, how does Al understand Sam? Because again, he's the observer. The brainwaves are definitely linked, and he can hear what Sam says, but
it's a good
this
point.
one just breaks a lot of rules. Yeah,
I agree with you, and they don't even address it. The dead man says, at least he didn't leap into a person who raises ghosts. that cracked me up. You're right. That was my fumble over there at the beginning. Ron Nefero says, well, Price of Reason Live, it required more suspension of disbelief. Yes. I guess I agree with what you're saying. There seems to have been a situation here where they didn't think through what we usually see on this show. And I think that him being in this chimpanzee raises a lot of questions. And they don't even attempt to answer them, really. But let's look at it. What else?
Now, I have a question for you right here with the scene that's going on, so you can let it play. Did they establish in this episode that he has a specific fear of going to space?
No.
I think he's just
introduction. It was a way to get him out of the capsule for the audience to see that, oh, this is a test subject.
But even later, like he's telling him, I can't go to space. I can't go to space. And I'm like, we've seen him be a fighter pilot. We've seen him,
right.
He seems very afraid of the idea of going to space, almost like it's supposed to be a phobia, but they never fully commit to that.
I think his fear was based on when Al came and said, if you don't go to space, you'll die, or something like that.
I think the fear was more of the fact that missions leading up to the Mercury mission were not very successful. And even though, fortunately, no one really died with the exception of the Apollo 1 accident, the details with regards to the chimpanzees that were used were not fully revealed. And I think it's the whole, I realized we're in the early 60s. Oh my gosh, they're wanting to put me in space. I have vivid memories, even though with the Swiss cheese brain, that a lot of those rockets blew up. And guess what? We get those little instances peppered throughout of the various real disasters of them experimenting with the Saturn V rocket.
But they don't go into specific as to how that relates to his experience as the chimp.
Well, I mean, the chimps were the test pilots that were going to be affixed onto those, and there hadn't been a successful launch yet. So that's the real trick.
But as the audience though,
Mhm.
writing wise, it wasn't revealed. Like you would have to kind of know the history of the space program at that instant to kind of make that extrapolation from
Yeah,
the story. It's not
Sam
really spelled out that way.
Yeah, because Sam says the monologue with regards to the fact that some of the rockets had disasters, but he didn't elaborate on the idea of like how that always would have terrified him if he were in that position. Like
Right.
the childhood fear of like that fear didn't go away until they actually landed on the moon. But since I know we're not there yet, that fear is coming back, and I can't seem to control it. Like that would be something to work into that part of his character.
Maybe he just felt that he doesn't know how to work like a spaceship or whatever they want from him, and the idea stressed him out. But I agree with you. Maybe if he would have while he narrated this, that's a good idea script. He would have said they would have sent at the time they sent anything and everything to space. A lot of it failed. As a kid, I always had fears about such things. If he just would have added that sentence, I agree with you. Script would have solved the problem. Is that what you meant?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like that's one of the fun parts of this show is that Sam kind of has his own little internal log,
Right.
like in Star Trek that he does as he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he's with every season he learns a lot more about how to identify where he's located, and in some cases his instincts point him in the direction of what he has to do in order to make the next leap. But here, like this is a very thin episode that kind of is just stretched to the 45-minute mark.
It's funny because we had another thin episode with that barber thing, and now this is kind of thin as well. And yeah, there's always a narration of quantum leaping through time has brought me to find out that a lot of things. He has like something that he says, and always like it has to do with that episode. But even here, this is like half-hearted. He's like, quantum leap, yeah. They threw a lot of things in space. I'm a chimp now.
Chimp now. I stand upright, then I have to pretend to play as a chimp, and
I do like this lady.
Yeah, I like her too. But this is the first time where now Sam can actually talk to Al at any point without having to seem silly or awkward. He doesn't have to hide by speaking into a phone or whispering or pretend like he's talking to an imaginary person because he's a chimpanzee and just making noises that Al can understand.
I feel like they need Dean Stockwell. Sometimes you have these episodes that are kind of silly or weird things happen, and they need Dean Stockwell to step up a bit. And I feel like they needed that from him here, and he did it. Like you see him a lot more. He's like he's bringing some levity and some humor, and you could tell that Dean Stockwell put more work into this one because it was so flimsy. That's how I felt when I watched it.
Yeah.
It's like
this one here, we find out that Al, as an astronaut, was actually part of the Apollo program and orbited the moon 10 times. And so I'm guessing this is a made-up mission, like Apollo 18 or something. I guess it wouldn't have been any of the others. We all know who the crew were on those.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a problem with that too, because there was something in season 2 where I had brought up on the podcast that it seemed like every week Al had another life experience, and it seemed a little bit too much that he had all these.
Yeah.
To have been a POW in Vietnam, and then to later be an Apollo astronaut.
He's like
just seems like people who go in to be these astronauts, like it's like going to the Olympics. It's something that these people, when they're very young, train for. They go, it's not usually a midlife after you've had psychological damage that they let you then go into space.
Well, they have to do the huge vetting process.
Yeah.
To do so. One of the things I could see NASA accepting, and it's basically on a very slim circumstance, but if Al was in a POW camp and isolated for months on end, he would pass the isolation test at NASA, which would actually make him an ideal candidate if he were to be, say, for instance, in the orbiting module as opposed to the lunar lander. And
unless he
whatnot.
had PTSD from it.
True, that's the other part.
Yeah.
They'd have to thoroughly examine him to see if he had post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of his POW experience, because he was a test pilot in the Navy, and then he fought in Vietnam, and then he was I think he ended up, because of Sam's actions, he ended up spending an extra year and a half or an extra 2 years in the POW camp, and then he got out, which means that he would have been in the late 70s, would be part of the NASA space program as an astronaut. So he'd be in that transition phase where they retired the Saturn V rocket and retired going to the moon and started building into the shuttle program. And then eventually he was pulled out of that to go into Quantum Leap.
Now, here's another thing that they revealed this season is that Sam brought him on. He saw him when they first met as somebody who was angry and ready to wash out.
Yeah.
And it was because of the whole situation with his wife and being so I just find it really hard to believe to put this astronaut period in between the bad stuff that happened and then him being angry in life later and nearly washing out, and Sam, becoming friends with him.
He was a Renaissance man. He was just able to do so many things.
Well, I mean, Al had a really hard life growing up. His father was taken away from him. His sister,
he was in an
Trudy,
orphanage.
was taken away.
His sister.
He was in an orphanage. He ran away and joined the circus once.
Joined a circus, bounced around with a pool hustler for a while. Like he's I mean, like if it wasn't
with the
for the
biker gang,
military, he would be dead. Because he'd have no other option to go in. Like the military, they'll take the homeless if they're a fighting age.
I tend to agree with Nick. I think that a lot of things, let's say everything I can somehow suspend disbelief, that they threw in the astronaut too is a bit much, but you know what? Yeah, it's Al. I'll accept it for whatever it is. Didn't he say he's an astronaut even in the first episode with the Sam flying the thing? So at least they're sort of consistent with that. I don't know if they always thought he would be a POW. That I think they threw in later.
Yeah, they threw that in later in the first season, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I think that initially they didn't plan on making him a POW, but then when there was all that stuff with Beth and his brother, it seemed too good of an idea to pass up to tie it all together with him. And honestly, those were great episodes. I really did like what they did there. But yeah, if you think about the astronaut thing, it seems like a bit much. But what can we do? In any case, Sam's a chimpanzee, and then this doctor, she is 27 years old, apparently.
The veterinarian doctor, yeah.
A veterinarian doctor, and she's an actress that later appeared in a ton of stuff, actually.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember the name, but maybe I can look it up.
She has a nice smile.
Yeah, she's nice. See, she should have been the love interest for Scott Bakula in this episode instead of his caretaker or whatever it is, but it is what it is. Anyhow, she meets this guy, and he's like 70 years older than her, but he's kind of like they hit it off. Like, maybe we should have dinner sometime. I don't know, or maybe not yet. Here he's just kind of eye flirting with her.
Mm-hmm. She says, I'd like to do it again. Or he said, I'd like to meet you up again or talk again.
Yeah.
They want to do it again, whatever it is.
He wants to do it all the time. And in any case, Sam writes on a note, he's like, oh, my name is Sam. And like, oh, it's such a joke. So many funny people in this office. And then
I thought they were going to do something else with that later. It was almost like they set something up for them to do something later when it was important to communicate with the doctor.
Right.
And then they just dropped it.
I thought that that's what would happen, that when she needed to know what happened to the other chimp, that Sam would write everything for her, and she'd be like, you are a genius. I can't believe it.
In reality...
Oh, go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
I was going to say, if he had reached for the pad and started writing in front of him, he would have... I think Sam could have realized he could have gotten past that. Now, for the episode to work, he can't suddenly become the genius chimp.
No, but I think a very risky move would have been if Sam, as the chimp, was able to speak English and everybody understood that and she freaked out and screamed and ran. I think there's more to explore there, because then there's like, this is the first chimpanzee that can talk. Like, they'll definitely experiment on him, but they're not going to kill him to do that first. They have to see the limitations of that before they go down that route. And the other part too is you then have the whole concept of, well, you can't just cut him open to find out how he talked, because he's the only one that can talk. So we might as well hold on to him as long as we possibly can. And when he dies of natural causes, then let's take a look inside him, because we got to figure out a way. And then Sam could do his whole spiels like, listen, I'm not really a chimp. I'm a human soul trapped inside the chimp's body, sent here by some third party being, superior being or something, to stop this. And then it's a whole, like, a debate, as opposed to, well, Sam's helpless. He's acquiescing to going to a cage, eating a banana, and what's kitty litter tasting treats, and being electrically shocked when he's not flipping the right switch. Like, he's just subjecting himself to a whole bunch of things where he's very passive in this episode.
There's another thing they could have done. Basically, whatever you said, he can talk. And then what happens is like you said, it's not worth it for them to kill him. But there's one rotten guy, just like the guy here, the guard, that either he's jealous or it annoys him that he can talk. And he's like, that guy's a freak. I got to take him out. And then, like, he has to stop that guy, the bad guy, from doing something bad.
They cut Charleston Heston up. Didn't work well for him either.
Well,
yeah.
So the reason why it wouldn't work, him being able to talk, is just because of the kind of show that Quantum Leap is. Like, you'd be getting into Doctor Who territory there. Like, in Doctor Who, aliens invade constantly in past decades.
Yeah.
But here, if suddenly there was a talking ape, this would have been like, national news. I mean, unless it was a government cover. But it would take away
a can of worms open.
Yeah, it takes away even though there's a sci-fi element to the show that we're believing Sam can jump back in time and do all that, there's a certain thing with history that they can't play too much, or it suddenly detaches the audience.
All right.
And I think if you talk, it would mess up.
Here's the thing that Script was mentioning, that there's the narration. Now he's in a cage. He's eating a banana. What's her name? Lola. What's the other one's name?
I think it's
yeah.
Oh, I can't remember. It's Kyla.
Corey.
Yeah. I think that they didn't need to do the Corey subplot.
It was so weird. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is annoying, actually. But then I like that she came here and she's like, here's a lemon drop, and Al's like, you're so sweet. Like, I don't know, it's funny. Al still cracks me up even in his like dumb thing. I really feel that Dean Stockwell did the best he could. He takes his job very seriously, Dean Stockwell. This is like complete nonsense, but he really is trying. And then remind me, is this already the part that they okay, this is the initial part where it turns out that this guy is like not nice to animals.
Right.
And I think they spit on him.
Yeah, Corey spits on him, and
then he's like, Doctor, you and I could also spend some time together, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think these animals like me. I hope they're not the only ones.
Right, something like that. Yeah. And then the seemingly sensitive doctor comes along, and he's like, oh, tell me about it. Maybe we can have dinner here. Maybe we can have dinner there. I don't know. I have to do this. Let's do this after Project Mercury. And then they're like, look at them. And then he's still trying to bang her. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's definitely trying to seduce her. Non-attractive guys.
Right. I mean, he looks like he's 100 years old. I don't even know why she was like flirting with him. I mean, he probably looks like not 100 years old compared to me, but she's like 27 years old. You know what I mean? Like he seems way out of her age. Like, it doesn't seem like
50. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that this lady would think that he's like anything special, that douchey doctor. But in any case, she's like, do you like your juice? It has caterpillars in it. And he's like, I hate caterpillars.
Like, he actually did start to like it, and then when he realized there's caterpillars.
It's got your favorite protein in it.
Caterpillars.
I didn't like it. It seemed like a constant beatdown of Sam. Like,
Humiliation of Sam.
I don't know
yeah.
why. Yeah, I didn't need that. Like, oh,
But are you
It-
saying that because you know it's Sam and he's played other characters, or are you not allowing yourself to accept that this is the character that he jumped into? Because I didn't have a problem with
oh, I don't have a problem with her feeding that, but I mean, it just Sam looks miserable. Like Scott Bakula looks miserable, and it just seems like I didn't need the constant jokes at his expense. I mean, it'd be one thing if they handed him a bowl of mealworms or something like that, and told him to eat up. But you know, why do that with it? Just to me, like, because that would be a thing. Like, if you handed me that and I'm in a chimp's body and say eat these mealworms, I'm still gonna have a hard time stomaching that. But you give it to me liquefied in a juice that tastes good, I don't think I'm gonna be spitting it out like that and freaking out.
Kid Cat says
I don't know.
that guy was such a creep. Caleb being
Yes.
Dr. Douche. Maybe he needed some grape juice plus. I don't know if that's. I don't know if I completely understood
I think
that.
it was cranberry and pineapple juice, right? Something mixed.
Yeah. So in any case, back to this. He's like, when I was in the war, my friends were dying right and left, and now I'm gonna make a difference, yo. And then, are you sure you don't want to go out with me to dinner?
After
I
the
I
met
don't
my-
think you've ever
back.
done a more off accent. This guy did not say yo.
Tonight's my AARP meeting. You want to join me, Toots? We go to the thing. Sam. Just the part where he's like, you gotta go to space. And then, do they tell Marty that they died? Does he already know here? Does Al know what's going on here yet, or no? Oh, it's still tests here.
Yeah. Al has told him that in the next 2 days, they vanish.
Oh, they vanished,
I think.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And then Zeke finds out, well, they died due to severe head trauma.
Right. Sam, press the buttons. You can't tell what buttons. The buttons, Sam. And then he does it.
Gets
then,
shocked when he does it wrong. Then he gets his treat, and Al and them have an argument where he should eat it. to
Right.
keep
Eat it, Sam. Eat it. And then like, he eats it.
Isn't it like
And
peanuts or something, or
No,
is it like a
Didn't he
little cookie.
describe it as like a
Cat chow.
cat
cat
box?
litter, actually. A cat
Right.
box.
Cat
Yeah.
litter. Cat box. Yeah.
Cat box. Yeah, that's what he said. Oh, well. What are they talking about here again? That they're not going to make the program? Or
they're
something?
not going to make the program because and this is another thing. When they have him in the chair and stuff, and he's doing the tests, they make Scott suddenly dumber than a chimp. And like,
When he's doing the buttons, you
The-
mean?
yeah, like they're buckling him in, and Al's not explaining to him, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. That they wait till they're moving and he's getting electrocuted, and so this is what you want to do. And it just like, and he's sitting there and he's getting it wrong, and I don't know. It just, once again, I just felt like every turn it seemed to
Well-
let's make Sam look ridiculous.
When he was in Jimmy, because Jimmy had Down syndrome, Sam had limitations himself because he was in there. Now, they could have said that because he's in a chimp, he has certain limitations now, but that would have been difficult because how can he talk to Al and how can he still be smart but stupid at the same time, which is one of the problems of the episode, I think. Don't you
Yep.
think?
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But see,
probably
and-
what you mean, Nick. That's why it looks weird, but go on.
They really should have gone one way or the other. Like it feels like they wanted to do this interesting offbeat episode, but they didn't commit to really making him like act like a chimp and think like a chimp. Maybe it would have been interesting too to have him have slightly mental, like less mental capability than a man because he's in the body of a chimp. Although I understand that when you go into that other person's body, I mean, you keep your faculties, a little bit of Swiss cheese brain, but it would have been interesting to kind of maybe borrow from the mind of the chimp because you're less than human.
You know what they could have done? They could have made it an episode that initially Al really has trouble communicating with him. He's all chimpy. And then what happens is that throughout the episode, together with his team in the present day, in the future, whatever it is, Al, along with like Gushy and Verbena Beaks and who knows who, they create something where they manage to fix the brainwaves or do something that we've never seen before, but like a new process that'll somehow give Sam enough clarity for momentarily, at least, to know what's going on. That's when he speaks, and when maybe the lady is shocked when something happens, and it only happens towards the end of the episode that he resolves it through the fact that he can suddenly speak. And then, like, before she can do anything about him speaking, he already leaps. Meaning, even if she goes and she says, the chimp spoke, nobody's going to believe her because it doesn't really matter anymore. You know what I mean? They'll be like, of course he did. And that would be it. Just a thought. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah. No, actually, I think that might have worked.
Script may have a better idea, but I just think that any idea that I think any of us think of is better than the one they chose, because they had a concept which was very ambitious, but it feels like they could have done this better.
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
There's a good gimmick right there where Al identifies Sam, and when Sam speaks to him, Al can't understand him, so he's like, Ziggy, we got to figure out a way where I can understand what Sam's saying, because everything that's coming out of his mouth is squeaks and grunts or something. Or maybe it goes down to where Sam has to write on the pad so that Al can read it, and then has to hide the paper so that he doesn't spoil.
I solved it. That's an option. The paper hiding, that's good. I have another option for you, and I think I'm knocking this out of the park now. I hope you're all sitting down. There are chimps in the world that know how to do sign language. This is a real thing.
Yes.
So what happens?
Somebody mentioned that in the chat earlier.
Oh, I didn't even notice. So I'm saying that he does sign language, but Al doesn't know sign language. So that's when, just like then with the lady with the grape juice, he brings like he says, well, Verbena Beaks doesn't know how to do sign whatever. He brings her in, even if we once again don't even hear her voice. Somebody actually is able to translate what he's saying, and that's how Al learns.
Or you do one of two things. You either bring in Tina, because that'd be funny,
right? Tina's
or you
funny.
Bring in Donna, and it makes things. You put the audience in on edge. Be like, will Sam recognize her?
Right, but that's too risky to bring her. I think that they wouldn't do that.
Well,
Tina, I like the idea. The fact that he's like, Sam, do you know that Tina is a master at sign language? That would have been funny. I agree with you, Script.
Would have been funny.
Do
but
it.
The other part too is you don't actually have to show them, because unless Al's touching them, Sam won't see them.
Right. I mean, the thing is, he can touch them once just so we know they're there. But then, what happens is it's just understood that she's there, kind of giving him an interpretation of what Sam is saying. And then he just communicates with Sam that way. We assume she's there, even if we don't see her. And she's able to see the thing. I don't know what. They could make that work. That would have been a better idea, I think. But regardless,
I think that would have been something you introduce as the episode goes on. But I think it would have been interesting to see the beginning of them trying to just body language communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Sam being confused, not really understanding what's going on, maybe not even fully understanding Al talking to him, just kind of put it in that state of confusion.
Like a crisis, kind of like in that, what's his face, in that Shock Theater episode, that basically it's not as bad as that, but they have a real trouble communicating, and they have to overcome that. That adds a layer of suspense, and we're also trying to figure out what's going on here. I think that would have been better.
Bryce, you just reminded me. The episode where Sam leaps into the dancer and he's dealing with the deaf lady, he remembers the sign language he learned trying to communicate with her better.
Ah,
Mhm.
yes.
That's how you can justify that he knows sign languages. Like he memorized that book from that previous leap.
Right.
Because remember,
That's
he
a
does
good
the whole
idea.
quantum leap sign thing to Al, and he's like, "Isn't that cool?"
Right. I agree
Bring
with
it
you.
back.
That would have been
Yeah.
cool. Attractive doctor lady then comes here and
Well,
What
they take
happened?
the other ape, and
Yeah,
then
they
they put
take
another
Tori.
ape in there to
Try to fool them to
fool
say
her.
that
Yeah,
it wasn't
doesn't
missing.
fool her. Yeah.
he manages to tell her that these guys are full of sorry, Nick, full
Full
of
of
poop.
feces.
Yes.
Monkey feces.
And then he's like, "Yeah, I took the monkeys. We need them to. I need to hit them on the head with bricks."
He didn't even switch out their neck tags. Like, how did
I
he think
know.
that was gonna work?
Right.
It's like,
Well, that's why
these guys aren't.
that's why
Yeah,
he's
these
only a
guys aren't
janitor.
even as smart as the chimps.
Right.
And they gave this man a gun.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "I'm sorry, Toots. I'm doing important work here. I gotta see if them helmets work, yo."
Step
And then-
aside, yo.
Oh well, that's something fantastic here is that he's using the chimps because they're so close to human physiology in some aspects. He's using them to test a new design for a safety helmet for pilots so that they won't suffer brain damage. But when we get to the next part of the clip and we see the type of test he does,
Hmm.
yeah, your brain will be protected, but your neck will be broken.
Yeah.
The dead man says chimps are stronger than humans. Sam could have easily beaten them. Maybe.
With a karate chop.
Oh,
With a back.
yeah, like
roundhouse
a
kick.
chimp can rip your arm off. Like there's no way that if he was doing karate chops to those guys in the body of a chimp that like he wasn't seriously wounding them and decapacitating them. You know, it's just
Well, they have a stronger
that
muscle
was
density for their size and weight, so that's why they can leap greater and they can rip your face off and all that type of stuff. However, like their endurance is pretty weak, so if you give them one good smack, like they're not getting up from that.
Tex Rogers says, "I would have thought that astro chimps would be far too valuable to waste in such tests." You know what?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
but they
Mario,
just
good evening.
flunked out of being an astro chimp is with it. Now I
Yeah.
do think though that it is funny that in the same place they're doing the rocket design and stuff, that's also where they're bashing chimps' heads in.
Mm.
Like I feel like that would be in a different facility than where rockets go up. But you know, maybe that's just me.
I don't use a helmet when I fly. Can't imagine one helping you in a plane crash. And Marks for 7. This episode is one of several rock solid arguments that he was in his own body, the rescue. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit weird. Like I said, there's a lot of suspension of disbelief in this episode, and what can we do? Back to this thing. She's like, "You'll gain nothing doing this experiment on chimps. Chimps are different than humans."
I disagree.
I don't know.
Yo.
I disagree.
Parts of the skull, so your tests are
Blunt
irrelevant.
force trauma to the skulls. I need to do that,
The-
yo.
The stuff that she said here, I'm just imagining him with gold chains.
I'm gonna
But,
knock their heads in, yo.
She makes such a good argument with him, but when she's talking to the commander, she sounds like a petulant child because she doesn't explain. Like here, she's explaining to him why his experiment is invalid.
Mhm.
Like even if you were to say the data collected would be worth the greater good, the data is flawed because what a chimp cranial can withstand is considerably more than what a human can. So even the data you get from this, it's not going to translate to humans.
Anyhow, you're right. I agree with you. But in this case, she's still talking to him. And I like how he went from wanting to bang her, sorry, Nick, to like, sorry, little lady, I got to do my experiments, yo. And then he walks away. She's like, how could you do that? I'm saving lives. And then, well, you really...
Maybe you ought to try it sometime, yo.
I mean, when he's holding his arms like that, that's a good yo moment.
Totally.
I'm saving lives, yo.
And he even says that he admires her stance.
I
Yeah,
but he's got
admire
a
your
job to do.
stubbornness, young
I think
lady.
this is probably the meat of the I guess the overall message,
preachy message. Yes.
of the episode. If you want to talk about the ethics, the ethics of experimentation on animals, etc. This obviously the back and forth between, because this scene went on pretty long. I mean, they started inside the warehouse thing, and then they came out and continued to talk. So it's a pretty lengthy discussion there.
It's not wrong that the space program in multiple countries didn't, always treat animals the best. I mean, the idea that there's
justice for Laika.
Yeah, sending animals up and then, okay, well, they're up there and they're not coming back.
Yeah.
I agree. So at this point, I think she runs in here to try to stop them from taking Sam.
This scene was, and I guess it continues in your next file, but this scene was pretty strong, and the music was pretty dramatic, and the stuff that was happening, obviously, if you continue to think, if you suspend your disbelief in knowing that he's a monkey, it's pretty dramatic.
I guess
so.
They
didn't have him make his stance more monkey-like. Right. He's using karate, but if he could have been more monkey-like, or if somehow there was a mirror somewhere or somewhere that they could then show us,
that would have been great.
A monkey there doing a punch or a kick.
Right, struggling, or even a monkey, even the chimpanzee, a reflection of the chimpanzee with the collar and the prod rod, going like that. I think that would have been really, really powerful.
Well, at this point, Sam is in the thing. They took him. There's a tranquilizer, and Al is trying to talk to him. He's like, "Sam, you have to wake up, Sam. They're gonna do a blunt force trauma. You got to get out of here." And then, I guess Sam at the last minute, Al somehow talks to him. At the very last minute, somehow, when the thing is about to hit his head, they're like doing the whole.
So
experiment.
I've been overly critical of this episode. So this is more of a nitpick.
Okay.
But I felt like we know he's going to survive. You want to have a little suspense in the episode, but we know Sam doesn't die. As an audience, we have that knowledge that he's not going to die. I felt like they drew out the suspense, like it's pressuring up. It's getting a little more pressure. Oh, it's all the way. And then they're doing a countdown. And he's still not, I felt like they just drew it out too long to it got to the point where you're like, well, yeah, he's not going to die. Whereas if they did it quicker, it takes a bit of time for your brain to catch up sometimes when you're in the moment of action in a show, and to tell yourself, oh yeah, nobody's in danger. These are the main actors. They drew it out so long that it got to the point where it's like, okay, let's see how he ducks his head, or
Well, I mean, I don't completely disagree with you. I think that's one of the problems when he leaps into somebody and that's the person that he's in is going to die. That's always a little more complicated than having him try to stop somebody else's death. Maybe here they should have made it so that the other chimp is attached to the machine and he has to somehow intervene and get her out of there. Maybe that would have been a little more suspenseful because he could fail and then the chimp will die. So maybe there's more at stake because you kind of think, like Nick said, he's not going to die. But it's still that's not my main issue with the episode. At least there was a little bit of tension, something, even though I don't disagree with you, Nick. But then at this point,
like I said, that's a nitpick. That if this was an episode blowing me away, I wouldn't have.
I agree with you. That's fair enough. So then he takes the gun. He's like, I gotta take Corey. I gotta take Corey with me. I can't just leave her here. Well, Sam, you gotta run down here. And he runs down, and then go outside and they hide
we have essentially a 10-minute chase scene. That's what we got.
Right. And then she's like, can you believe what he's doing? Do you know what he's doing in the tapes? He's like, yeah, I know, because I approved it. You approved this thing? How dare you? Well, that's what we do around here. We do tests on it. I can't believe it. And
is Bryce motorboating, or is it just me?
No, he's robot.
No,
Okay.
yeah, okay. I was turning off my camera because I thought maybe my internet was going low.
Yeah.
I was motorboating.
Yeah, you're talking like a robot.
Am I still motorboating?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
I'm motorboating. Okay, guys, I'll be back. I'll be
Okay.
back.
But
Robo price.
did anyone else find it odd that the female chimp was just riding on his back? Because in reality, he's not that much bigger.
He shouldn't be. Yeah, exactly. He shouldn't
Right,
be that
yeah.
much bigger.
Sure.
He's carrying her like a human carrying a chimp, not
Yeah.
like a chimp carrying a chimp. It's just
But again,
felt weird.
it is what it is.
Am I still motorboating?
No,
Nope.
you're fine now.
No.
Okay. Where was I?
We were talking about the chase scene, yo.
Yeah, we were in that 10-minute chase scene.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me.
They're hiding
back.
behind the barrels. There you
Barrels.
go.
No, but first there's like, can you believe he's doing these experiments? Yeah, I believe it. I approved it. How dare you? All these animals. Yeah, we do experiments on them. I can't believe it, sir. I can't believe it. And then the thing is like,
Oh, that doctor comes out and steals the Jeep, and then he goes, "Yo."
I would have liked
I'm
to
gonna
have seen Sam as the chimp driving the Jeep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd been funny.
I kind of
Reach the
expected that.
pedals.
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been cool. He's like, I'm gonna take this Jeep, yo. And then and yeah, he drives by. That was a very clever maneuver from Sam. In any case,
You know,
at this,
I felt a little weird that Sam
was kissing her.
Seemed I felt a little weird that Sam seemed to be maybe a little dependent on Al and how to escape the base. And I guess, Al has a little bit of a better perspective on he can go anywhere and just kind of check things out. But it's almost like I almost felt like Sam was acting like he was blind. Like, I mean, just look around and see where he can run to.
And this is when you expect his ape abilities to come in handy. Like, we didn't really get to see him swinging around anywhere to get,
Right.
I don't know.
I agree. It would have been good if they made him, they explained, like Script was saying, or one of you were saying, that it was like they would have dumbed him down. So it would have made a bit more sense that he has like, he had some kind of, he's not as smart as usual.
Animalistic fear.
Yeah. So in any case, he's crossing the thing. The funny thing to me is that this is like a pond that looks like, it's about
It's
1
like-
feet, 1 feet deep.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's like the river you see in Robin Hood Men in Tights that Little John is guarding. It's
right. And then he's like, "Oh no, I can't. Oh no, it's this guy. I can't swim, yo." And
he's being like,
then
he's like tangled in seaweed.
Yeah.
But this is like one of those things. It's like you can totally tell that they could just stand up.
Right.
It's like,
right. And he's like, Al, I gotta go save him. I can't let him die. And then like he goes, he pulls him out, and then he pulls him out. He's like, "How did he do it? How did he do it? How did that monkey pull me out, yo?" And then
Doesn't have enough body fat to be able to do that. And then
he's not supposed to be able to. I don't know how he did it.
Longingly.
All right, put that gun away now. You hear?
So the doctor must have changed her shoes, because in the earlier scenes she was wearing those heels, and then now she just booked it down to the shoreline and she was wearing flats.
Is she
or she's not wearing
even-
shoes at all. Like that's just
No, I think
animal.
she's barefoot. She's the barefoot doctor.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And she's still the
so
same height.
she didn't pull a Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And then Sam, don't you say a word. And then like she shoots the bad guy. And then
Right in the keister.
Right in the keys.
Now, in this though, it is not that chimps just don't mentally know how. They explain that because of how muscly dense they are, they can't float. They can't do that. So technically it should be physically impossible for him to do this save.
Within
Well-
the chimp body, yes, but this is the
But
weird
he's-
part about Quantum Leap is that
Right.
whatever Sam's innate strength is comes with him when he inhabits the other body. That's why when he's in the body of the woman, he's strong. He's as strong as a man.
And the
I-
chimp is in the chamber. Like the chimp body is somewhere else.
Well, no, the chimp body is there. It's just this chimp soul is. I would like to see in the waiting room Sam's body with the chimp. in
Right.
mind.
There are things that have never really been, there's things that I think that they didn't really dig deep enough, especially in these kind of episodes where he jumps into these strange situations.
I just thought of all the times when a woman's in Sam's body. We've never gotten to see how that person reacts to
That's
not
true.
understanding what's going on and suddenly being in the other gender.
There's a lot of
you're-
Transformers on this show.
Hold on to that thought because something like that might be coming up.
Okay.
In any
Or,
case,
or the black guy from pushing up Miss Daisies. He's like,
He was like,
"Ooh
what?
boy, I'm a white guy."
so at this point, I think Al's like, the doc's gonna go be a veterinarian somewhere, and Sam, you guys get married and have a kid, or I don't know what, and then
Bobo and Corey
Bobo and Corey.
Right.
have a kid.
No,
Luckily, Sam doesn't have to be there for that.
Yeah.
no, this
And
point,
again, I real fast, I kind of had to watch the explanation twice because I still was wondering, like, well, why did he jump into this chimpanzee
to save his life.
to save the chimpanzee's life? But I guess, but it's interesting because not having seen this entire series yet, it's the first time that he jumps into an animal. Why doesn't he do it, more often? There's animal cruelty all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. It seems a little off.
And I have to say that something really strange happens here, which I only noticed because it played the beginning of the next episode and I stopped after like a minute. But basically, he leaps into this situation that he's in this basement or whatever, this apartment, and he's kind of going up the stairs and he's going quietly, whatever. And then suddenly runs into another lady that's like, oh, like, get down, go see what's going on there. And then they're cops. He goes in there and he sees like a body. And then there's the credits. When you actually see this episode next week, for some reason, the leap starts not when we saw it. Usually it's the opposite. You see less, and then when you see the real episode, you see more. Here it's the opposite. Instead of this whole scene of him going up the stairs, he basically appears here. Like in this part where this cop appears. He
Yeah.
appears.
And I
It's
think
like-
that's interesting too, because I was watching this. I'm like, wow, this is a really long tease.
Right. And then in the actual episode, he only leaps into here. It's like a phony. It's the first time I've seen it. Meaning, instead of leaping to where we saw him here, I
Mhm.
think, unless maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know, but I think that they cut all of this out. Like, they made it a lot shorter. He like leaps in and immediately he's like in
Does
this
he trip-
situation
does he
with this
trip on the
lady.
blood? What's up with him tripping on the blood?
Yeah, that's
Well,
He steps on the blood and is like, oh.
I'm
Yo.
wondering if that's because of runtime
Evidence?
in the next episode that they was like, well, we can cut that short
Yeah,
and give
Malachi
ourselves
Ulam says
another
time
30
edit.
seconds.
Maybe they needed they needed that time, but it is shortened. It's like the
Yeah.
preview for the first time ever is long, whereas the thing itself is shorter. But I will say quickly, we'll talk about this episode, this chimp episode in a second. I just want to say that next week's episode, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember liking that episode. I remember that one being a more kind of memorable one. But let's go on.
Good. Before we do our things, I do want to address one thing that Ro just brought up before we were talking about the next episode. Because as much as I've dogged on this episode, they did explain why he got into a chimp when he was talking with Al, and why he doesn't go into it. So they established right there, he's not gonna, there's no other kind of animal that he's gonna go into. It was because brainwaves are the closest to humans on the planet, and he gave some other little, like, there was that, and then there was this, and that is how this happened. So this is like a bunch of strange things, and chimps are close enough to people, so that's that's why this happened, and why we won't see it continue to happen. And, we're not going to see an episode where he's a dog.
Correct, because
I
the
guess so.
chimps are 99% almost identical to humans.
Right. Moroxtra says they had to stretch the chimp episode and shorten the next one. It's possible. I'll accept that.
Odd, but it's because it's the same time
it's
slot,
funny.
the same hour. They have to occupy.
But I can see that because we're talking about how it seems like the story was a little thin, the explanations were a little thin, et cetera, so they had to pad it with something.
The dead man says Al mentions that at least he didn't leap into a frog, and Matthew Marcillo says the next leap is very psychologically disturbing. I agree. I like it. That's why I like it. Ron Donofero, him jumping into an animal is weak. I think they were just trying to have fun with it. Yeah, maybe it seemed like an interesting idea when they tossed it around in the writer's room, but I feel like once it got time to do it, as much as Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula really give it their all here, it just feels like an episode. It doesn't rank even up among the top 50% for me. It is like it is rather bottom of the table type of episode. I think it's not the worst episode. There's still one that I can think of that I dislike. The really dislike. So I wouldn't put it there. But this is certainly not a standout episode for me.
No.
Well, it ranks high for me in that it's in my top 2 worst episodes so far. So
what's the other one that you hate?
And see, this is good. This is going to be me specific. Yeah, the one that was all the occult stuff like that. But that is my personal faith and taste and stuff. So I get why everybody else loved that episode.
I respect your taste, but I do think that if you would have gotten to the end of it, there was actually something more spiritual into it. Because I
get what you're saying, because I went to Wikipedia and read the synopsis of the episode, so I know that it was a dream and but
no, but not only that it's somebody is basically telling Sam that who allowed him to go put right where he put wrong, and I think that that's something very strong in that episode. That when it happens, it's like, oh wow. We never thought of that. You know what I mean? So I understand the parts that you didn't like about it, but I think that the conclusion that Al is sort of like Sam is somehow annoying a force that wants bad things to happen is actually something that we've never encountered, not before, not after. Maybe we will in the future, but I did like that idea in that episode.
But like that episode, I didn't finish watching it. I didn't come on to the podcast because I felt like, if you don't watch it, you can't really talk about it. It's kind of my motto. This one I did watch, and so in that way I almost feel like I feel stronger about it in some ways because I did force myself to watch it.
I still claim that had you watched the final few scenes of the episode you didn't like, you would have, I think, been able to appreciate those specific scenes. So I regret that you didn't watch them because I think you would have liked them. But that's just my opinion. It doesn't matter though. We respected your decision, and I understand where you're coming from. So it is what it is. And let's see what else. Yes, the Boogeyman, the Stephen King episode. I could see why maybe it's not for everybody, but I do like that episode. In any case, back to this chimp one. Ro, what did you think of the chimp episode?
Well, I went in thinking that I was going to hate it 100%, but after watching it, I realized I didn't hate it as much as I thought. I didn't hate it as much as you guys were talking about it in the chat. I thought it was a little gutsy, although the execution might have left something to be desired. But I think, I think if they were kind of giving you a message about the ethics of animal experimentation and science and all that stuff, I mean, I love animals, and I think, I think it's a good message overall. But again, just a little short on the execution. But I'll give them props for trying something new, like in the middle of the series, season wise and story wise. Sometimes when you do the same thing over and over again, the series starts to get stale. And I think maybe they were kind of feeling that at this point, and then wanted to kind of try something new. And I'll give them credit for that.
Script, how did you feel about this episode?
I mean, I'm with Ro in the fact that I appreciate the attempt. Definitely an interesting concept. Part of me thinks that it was one aspect of trying to tell a moral story with regards to animal cruelty and experimentation. Another part felt like it was a gimmick. It's like, okay, we're gonna put him into a chimp now. So, I mean, it's definitely not in the favorites, but I would say it's just slightly below the mid to average episodes, just because its failings are not so much monkey related. It's a very thin plot, and it's a little bit of an ambiguous type of goal that's established in that first act. And the resolution also doesn't feel like it ties into what the goal was, because it seems kind of thin that the premise is, oh, you have to save Bobo from dying of a head injury, but it ends up having a larger impact in the sense that, well, if you convince this doctor that's conducting these experiments that are not actually useful to his research, that they're wrong, and therefore saving the other chimpanzees in the program, that is why you're here. You're here to get him onto the right path for making proper safety standards and also proper testing, not exploiting animals to do so. That would have been a better goal, and also a more entertaining challenge for Sam, who's can't speak, to try and convey that message to that particular doctor.
Tex Rogers, this show felt like it was written by an animal rights activist. Kind of reminds me way too many of the new Quantum Leap shows. I can understand what Tex Rogers is saying. Out of a lot of them that we've seen here, this one, because the story doesn't really back it up in such a polished way, it feels like there's more of a kind of message that they wanted to push, whereas they didn't have the story to really bring it home. So you're kind of left with a sort of heavy-handed message. So I kind of agree with him. Although somehow, even this episode, I can't believe I'm saying it, even this chimp episode, I probably like better than most of the new Quantum Leap episode, if not all of them, because the new one gets so much wrong, and this one at least has Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell. It's by no means not my favorite episode, but at least it has something, you know? Nick, how did you feel about this episode overall?
To quote another movie, I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue. I hated this episode. I have to ask you, Price, in the new series, do they ever leap into a chimp?
I can't say that they do, but
Okay,
I will
well,
say
that is one positive thing that I can say that the new series has over this one.
No, right, I think the new series they might have had that.
Did they? I don't think
can't
they
remember.
had
I can't remember specifically, but something in the back of my head is saying I think that guy went into an animal body at one point.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I actually don't think so, but you know what? I can't explain to you how much it annoys me, the newer one. They do things so badly that even this chimp one somehow I probably like better. The Dead Man says it's like a bad episode of Star Trek.
So, I feel like I set because I was complaining about this one before Ro watched it, so I think I set the bar low for Ro.
Yes.
But when he says you guys in the chat, it was me, and then Price going, yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, I remember not liking it. That was like Price's contribution. But
and then everybody started talking about the Robbie Williamson or Robbie Robertson movie where he's a monkey too. So I had monkeys like bombarding me all over the place. I'm like, oh, I got to watch this thing about a monkey.
I like monkeys, and you know what? I don't mind. I don't mind the message that's in this, and I even don't mind a more heavy-handed message if it's done well. Like a lot of the stuff that we say we like, be it classic Trek, classic Doctor Who, different things. There's a lot of episodes that do have a very straightforward and heavy-handed thing, but they tell it with a good, compelling story, and you're along for the ride. When you have a poor story or poor acting, all these things, and then you have a point where they just turn to the camera and give a speech, that's where a lot of this modern sci-fi, where they get accused of having heavy-handed, political talk or whatever. The thing for me, and we've kind of talked about it throughout I have a feeling, and the chat already mentioned something. I don't know if they're pulling that from commentary or interviews, but I don't think Scott Bakula wanted to do this episode.
I don't think so
And
either.
I don't think he gave I think if he had bought all in and was like, okay, I'm gonna be the most chimp there's ever been, and played it up and did it, but he looked miserable the whole time. The scene where her hand is off camera, but she is putting the thermometer up his butt, and you see his face. Like,
was that the equivalent of Luke Skywalker drinking the milk of the naked titty
yes,
monster,
it
dude?
was. It was. it made me lose a little respect for the people. Like, they shot that and goes, yes, let's put that in there. Let's not cut that scene.
I'm okay with what you're saying. I understand. I can't really argue.
I have yet to have, watched an episode. There's some that I'm like, that wasn't the greatest. If I was rewatching this on my 5th time through, I'd probably skip that episode. This is an episode I actually felt regret over watching. I did not like it. And I'm like, I went to bed last night upset. I was like, man, that episode, like, this just, and, but hey, we're, how many seasons, that's going pretty good for a show. But I mean, I feel about this show like, here, once again, Price won't get this one, but like when Janeway and Tom Paris became salamanders.
Oh, God. There you go.
That was a horrible episode too.
That's how I feel about this.
It's okay. I mean, I didn't see that one because I stopped watching. Voyager is the only one that I didn't do a full viewing on Star Trek. I really need to. I know how much you love that show.
That episode of Voyager, that's like the Crusher in Love with a Ghost episode.
Oh yeah,
is the TNG but it's they take 2 of the crew members who have no romantic interest in each other, devolve them into salamanders, and then they mate and have babies.
You got to create a new species, and then they get devolved back to human, and then their offspring, I guess, thrives in that.
Yeah, it was like.
And on that very positive note, I'm going to start doing some shout outs to people to make sure we got everybody. Matthew Marcillo, Rhonda Nefero, Tex Rogers, The Dead Man. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. Caleb Levine. Marla Sharondoff, I'm sure I saw here. Marks for 7, Mur Rockstra.
Price, can you do a poll? I'd be interested if the chat likes this episode.
You have a capability of doing a poll, don't you?
Not while I'm on my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
Sure, I'll try it.
Ro can do it, I think. Anyhow, Marks for 7, Rhonda Nefero, The Dead Man, Malachi D. Wildman. I saw Kit Kat at some point, but I don't know where she disappeared. Super Mario Brothers 3. I'm late. It's okay. Marla Sharondoff, I see her now. And I thought I saw Kit Kat.
Yes,
now it's like
I
the
saw
Mandela.
Kit
Oh,
Kat,
here she is. It's almost as if someone had a vendetta against Scott and wanted to humiliate him. Does feel that way.
Or just wanted to get him in his underpants.
Yeah.
Ziggy is referred to as a male in this episode.
Ziggy's always referred to as a male, but has a female voice.
That's true.
And
Maybe it was an early version of Transformer person.
well, I think it all comes down to the fact that machines don't have a gender, but needs some sort of pronoun to refer to it.
Unless they're
And-
current Transformers.
Unless they're current Transformers.
Rhonda Nefero says, I miss Lisa. Hope she shows up next week. I'm going to tell you
Oh.
that recently she replied to one of my videos saying that she's going to be missing for a few weeks. I don't know how long that'll be, but I guess she has stuff that she's doing. I hope her schedule clears up. We'd love to see her here, of course. So yeah, that should be okay. And Marla Sharondoff, I watch all of Enterprise, most of the Next Generation, some of Voyager and Deep Space Nine, less of the original Star Trek, Lower Decks and Discovery. Haven't seen all the other ones. I like Enterprise. I basically have seen everything except for all this new crap, and except for like the Kurtzman era and Voyager. I started but didn't finish, and
Voyager-
probably
Voyager is a really great cast and a writing team that couldn't measure up to them.
I see.
That's the best way to describe it, because Kate Mulgrew as a captain, brilliant.
She's
captain,
my favorite.
But the thing is, she is a schizophrenic captain, very inconsistent from episode to episode, season to season. It's like they didn't know what her character was.
Well, and I think you can tell in the first couple seasons there, and everybody that was on the writing staff and stuff have talked about this, how there was a real battle behind the scenes of what the show was going to be. They wanted it more like Deep Space Nine. The writing staff did. They wanted it an ongoing series, and the ones behind the scenes also wanted it to be the episode of the week, so it could be like TNG, and because DS9 was not doing as well. And
DS9 was in decline as Voyager was starting up because it was ramping up its series. You're absolutely right. 'Cause they were echoing with the Kazon, with the species that had the phage. That was trying to be the consistent struggles that they'd be encountering in this part of the Delta Quadrant, and then it collapsed in on itself.
And when you look at the Bible, because each of these shows have a Bible that happens before the thing goes, and it's always interesting to look at what's really different from what actually came. And like they were like, every week you're gonna see the damage on the ship. The ship is gonna get in worse shape as this. They really kind of almost made it seem a little bit Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
In that way, and what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of the original, but just like we're running out of water, and they tried to do that in some episodes. They tried initially to keep the Maquis and have that conflict, kind of like DS9. They were allowed to have conflict, where TNG wasn't. Everybody got along with everybody. But once, and so you see flip-flop. You can see like studio notes where like in one episode, B'Elanna's real outright. She's real, I'm a Maquis, I'm not Starfleet. In the next episode, she's a model officer. But once it got a couple seasons in, and all the characters, and really, it's when they swapped out Kes for 7 of 9. I feel like the show hit a stride, and once you appreciate that show, you can go back and watch those earlier episodes, and there's good episodes in there. Once you have an appreciation for the cast,
maybe I'll give it another chance at some point. But
I should give you a list of just good episodes to get you hooked.
But I don't know. The ideal thing would be that I just sit and watch them. But somehow I'm trying to think if I even made it through the end of the first season. But man, was it tough! I really, really didn't enjoy it, and it was a shame because I got through all the other stuff, even the ones that had mediocre seasons. I got through everything, but I couldn't get through Voyager. It's okay though. Maybe at some point I'll be able to do it, but it also requires time and me to pay attention and stuff like that. In any case, we're already starting to wrap up here, so I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to, of course, thank you guys for hanging out with me, the chat, of course, and the panel of gentlemen here. Ro from the Sacrif Podcast. I put their links, something that I should do more often. I put their links in the YouTube. So when you saw the links that I put for Sacrif Podcast, for the Script Doctor, and for Nick's channel, the Backyard Tardis, I put that all in here, and I highly recommend that you subscribe to each and every one of them. So yeah, you should do that. And I guess now that we've kind of wrapped up our thoughts on this episode, which I think is nobody's favorite episode, I think that we can do our outro and be on our way. Even Script did a funny hand gesture, a rare hand gesture. Let's see, outro video. How do
Take
I?
care, everybody. It was great.
I'll see you next time. Next time is a really interesting episode.
Yes.
See you next time.
I'm such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. And my friends are awesome too. They make so many videos. I'm such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. Now we are an awesome group making live streams for you. I'm